Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. Have you ever regretted staying silent? Have you ever watched something happen before your eyes, knowing you should have spoken up, but fear, doubt, or pressure held you back? Some people believe silence is wisdom. Others say silence is power. But I tell you today, silence can be dangerous. Silence can be deadly. And silence can cost you everything you were destined to become. There are 5 critical moments in life where silence is not an option. 5 moments where your destiny, your influence, and your very future depend on your willingness to speak. If you ignore these moments, you are not just harming yourself, you are betraying your own purpose. Let's dive into these 5 situations where you should never be silent. Lies spread when the truth remains silent. If you see deception at work, whether in your home, your workplace, or your community, and you refuse to correct it, you are allowing darkness to prevail. The truth may not always be welcomed, but it must always be spoken. Silence in the face of injustice is agreement with oppression. If you witness wrongdoing and say nothing, you become an accomplice to evil. Whether it's injustice in society, in relationships, or in leadership, your voice matters. Speak up, defend the voiceless. This world is full of voices trying to silence your faith, your morals, and your convictions. But if you don't stand for what you believe, you will fall for anything. Never be afraid to declare your beliefs, even when you stand alone. Conviction is stronger than compromise. Fear is a thief. It steals opportunities, destroys dreams, and silences destinies. The greatest battles in life are won by those who refuse to let fear keep them silent. If you are afraid to speak, that is when you must speak. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear control you. Your words are powerful. A single sentence can ignite a movement. A single speech can change a generation. Some of you are one conversation away from shifting your entire future, but fear is keeping you quiet. I challenge you today, speak, declare, confront, because your silence may be the reason nothing is changing. Your voice is a weapon. Your words carry power. If you remain silent when you should speak, you are allowing someone else to write your story. I leave you with this. When the moment comes where you must choose between silence and courage, choose courage, choose truth, choose purpose. Because the world is not changed by those who remain silent. It is changed by those who dare to speak. Silence is often seen as wisdom, a refuge for those who seek peace. But there are moments when silence is not just unwise, it is destructive. There are times when keeping quiet is not an act of intelligence, but an act of surrender. When truth is under attack, when deception is at work, and when wrong is being portrayed as right, silence becomes dangerous. Imagine watching a fire spread in a house while people are sleeping inside. Would you stay silent and let them perish, or would you raise your voice and warn them? The same principle applies to life. When lies are being accepted as truth, when people are being misled, and when values are being compromised, your silence makes you a participant in the destruction. Many stay silent because they fear confrontation. They don't want to offend. They don't want to disrupt the peace. But let me tell you this. Peace built on silence in the face of falsehood is not peace. It is submission to chaos. The world does not need more quiet observers. It needs courageous voices. It needs men and women who will stand up and declare what is right no matter the cost. Speaking up does not mean being reckless. It does not mean attacking others or being rude. It means standing firmly on the foundation of truth, refusing to let deception flourish unchecked. The greatest changes in history were not made by those who remained silent. They were made by those who had the courage to raise their voices, even when they stood alone. So I ask you, what are you staying silent about that you should be speaking up for? What truth are you withholding because of fear? Understand this, your silence does not protect you, it empowers those who oppose what is right. If you want to see change, you must be willing to speak, to stand, and to declare the truth boldly, because in the battle between truth and deception, your voice is your greatest weapon. Injustice thrives where silence reigns. When wrong is done and no one speaks up, oppression strengthens its grip. It is easy to believe that someone else will stand up, that someone more powerful or more qualified will take action. But history teaches us that injustice does not disappear on its own. It grows in the absence of resistance. Think of moments in history when people suffered simply because those who had the power to speak remained quiet. Slavery persisted because people chose comfort over confrontation. Corrupt leaders ruled because those who knew the truth refused to challenge them. Families were destroyed because one person remained silent instead of exposing wrongdoing. If you see injustice, whether in your community, your workplace, your home, or even within yourself, your silence makes you an accomplice. Saying nothing in the face of evil is the same as agreeing with it. The oppressor counts on your silence. The manipulator depends on your fear. The abuser is strengthened by your hesitation. But the moment you break your silence, you break the chain. The moment you speak up, you take away the power that injustice had over you and those around you. This is why the boldest leaders in history were not those who had the most power, but those who had the courage to speak when it was most dangerous. So I ask you, where in your life have you tolerated injustice because speaking up seemed too difficult? What situation have you watched in silence hoping someone else would handle it? Remember, your voice is your weapon. If you refuse to use it, then you are surrendering your power to those who should not have it. Speak even when your voice shakes. Stand even when you stand alone, because justice does not prevail by accident. It is enforced by those who dare to challenge what is wrong. Your values define who you are. They are the foundation of your character, the principles that shape your decisions, and the standards that guide your life. But we live in a world where values are constantly under attack. Society will pressure you to compromise, to remain silent, to blend in rather than stand out. And if you are not careful, you will find yourself conforming to things you once stood against, simply because you refuse to speak up. Have you ever been in a room where people mocked what you believed and you said nothing? Have you ever watched your faith, your morals, or your integrity being ridiculed and you chose silence instead of courage? The world does not respect those who remain quiet about what they believe. It rewards those who stand firm in their convictions, even when they are unpopular. If you do not defend your values, they will be redefined for you. If you do not speak up for what is right, others will convince you that wrong is acceptable. This is why so many people drift away from their purpose, not because they made one big mistake, but because they allowed small compromises to weaken their stance over time. You must decide today that you will not be silent when your principles are challenged. When people try to pressure you into doing what you know is wrong, let them know where you stand. When the culture around you tries to erase truth, let them hear your voice. When fear whispers that it's safer to stay quiet, remind yourself that your silence has a cost, because every time you refuse to stand for something, you are falling for something else. So I ask you, what do you believe in? What are your values? And most importantly, do your words and actions reflect them? Never let fear, pressure, or the desire to fit in silence your convictions. Speak up, stand firm, because a life without strong values is a life easily controlled by the world. Silence in the face of deception is agreement with a lie. We live in a world where misinformation spreads faster than truth, where falsehoods are repeated until they sound like reality. And if you do not speak up, if you do not challenge the lies being told, then those lies will shape the minds of those around you, including your own. Have you ever watched someone spread a false narrative about a person, an event, or even about God, and you remain silent? Maybe you thought, it's not my business, or someone else will correct it. But here is the truth. When a lie goes unchallenged, it gains power. When deception is left unchecked, it becomes the new standard. Consider this. The greatest manipulations in history did not begin with violence. They began with words. They began with people accepting lies because they were too afraid to confront them. They began with those who knew the truth remaining silent while others rewrote reality. If you do not speak up when lies are being spread, then you are allowing others to dictate what truth looks like. And if you let them control the truth, they will control your beliefs, your decisions, and ultimately your destiny. So ask yourself, how many lies have you allowed to stand because speaking up felt inconvenient? How many people around you have been misled because you thought silence was the safer choice? Your voice matters. The truth needs defenders. And if you do not defend it, then deception will reign without resistance. Speak even when it is uncomfortable. Correct falsehoods even when it costs you friendships. Stand for truth even when it makes you unpopular. Because if you let lies persist, they will not just reshape the world. You will wake up one day and realize they have reshaped you. Silence in critical moments can cost you your destiny. There are times in life when an opportunity comes your way, when a door is open before you, and if you fail to speak, that moment will pass you by forever. Too many people remain silent when they should be bold. They allow fear, doubt, or insecurity to rob them of what was meant for them. Think about the times you wanted to ask for something, a promotion, a new opportunity, a relationship, or even guidance, but you held back. You assumed people would reject you. You told yourself it wasn't the right time, and because you didn't speak, nothing changed. You stayed in the same position, trapped by your own silence. Opportunities do not wait for those who hesitate. If you do not have the courage to speak up when it matters most, you will watch others take the opportunities that could have been yours. Life rewards those who are bold enough to ask, to step forward, and to declare what they want. Even the Bible says, "You have not because you ask not." If you remain silent, you cannot expect doors to open on their own. Consider the story of great leaders, pioneers, and innovators. They were not silent when their moment came. They did not wait for permission to seize their destiny. They spoke, they asked, they declared their purpose with confidence, and because they refused to be silent, they stepped into the future they were meant to have. So I ask you, how many blessings have you lost because you refused to ask? How many doors have remained closed because you were too afraid to knock? Understand this: the world belongs to those who speak up, who take initiative, and who refuse to let silence steal their future. Today, make a decision. When your moment comes, when the opportunity is before you, do not hold back. Speak, ask, declare, because the future does not belong to the silent. It belongs to those who have the courage to claim it. Silence in times of crisis can be deadly. When danger is near, when someone is in trouble, when a wrong decision is about to be made, your voice could be the difference between life and destruction. But too often, people remain silent out of fear, thinking, "It's not my place," or "someone else will say something." And because of that hesitation, preventable disasters unfold. Think of a moment when you saw someone making a harmful choice, whether a friend, a family member, or even a leader, and you knew in your heart that you should say something, but you didn't. Maybe you thought, "I don't want to upset them," or "it's not my problem." But later, when things fell apart, you realized that one word, one warning could have changed everything. This is the reality. When you see destruction coming and you say nothing, you share in the consequences. When you stay silent while people you care about walk into danger, your silence makes you a witness to their downfall. True love, true leadership, and true responsibility demand that you speak up, not in judgment, but in truth. History is filled with stories of those who spoke up and changed the course of events. And it is also filled with stories of those who remained silent and watched destruction unfold. The difference between those two outcomes was the courage to use their voice. So ask yourself, how many times have you remained silent when you should have warned someone? How many lives could have been saved? How many mistakes could have been avoided if only you had spoken up? Do not let fear hold your voice captive. When you see danger approaching, be the one who sounds the alarm, because in moments of crisis, silence is not just a mistake, it is a betrayal. Silence when your heart is heavy will only destroy you from within. Too many people suffer in silence, carrying burdens that were never meant to be carried alone. They battle depression, anxiety, fear, and stress, yet they refuse to speak. They tell themselves, "No one will understand," or "I don't want to bother anyone." But silence is not strength. It is a slow poison that weakens the soul. How many times have you smiled while in pain? How often have you acted like everything was fine when deep down you were struggling? The truth is, pretending does not heal you. Hiding does not make the pain go away. The weight you refuse to share will eventually crush you. Even the strongest people need help. Even the most independent person needs someone to lean on. No one was designed to carry the pressures of life alone. That is why community exists. That is why relationships matter. But if you do not open your mouth and let someone in, you will continue to suffer in isolation. Some of the greatest downfalls in life happen because people refuse to admit they need help. They wait until they are completely overwhelmed before speaking up, and by then the damage is already done. You do not have to let it reach that point. There are people who care, who will listen, who will stand with you, but they cannot help if they do not know. So I ask you, what pain have you been hiding? What burden have you been carrying in silence? Today is the day to speak. Talk to someone. Seek help, because silence in your struggles will not make you stronger. It will only make you sink deeper, and you were never meant to drown alone. Silence in the presence of injustice makes you a part of the problem. Too often people witness wrongs being committed, see oppression taking place, watch corruption unfold, and yet they say nothing. They convince themselves, it's not my fight, or someone else will speak up. But history has proven that injustice thrives not because of the loudness of the wicked, but because of the silence of the good. Think about the times you have seen someone treated unfairly. Maybe it was at work where a colleague was discriminated against and you chose to look away. Maybe it was in your family where someone was being mistreated but you didn't want to get involved. Maybe it was in society where laws were being twisted against the weak and you thought, what can I do? But the truth is, your voice could have made a difference. Silence in the face of injustice does not make you neutral, it makes you complicit. When you refuse to stand for what is right, you give power to what is wrong. When you ignore the suffering of others, you allow the system that caused their suffering to continue. Many people believe that staying quiet will keep them safe, but in the end, injustice never stops with just one person. It spreads until one day it reaches you. And by the time you need someone to speak for you, you will realize that the silence you once embraced is now turned against you. The great movements of change in history were not led by people who sat quietly in the face of oppression. They were led by those who had the courage to speak even when their voices shook. They were led by those who refused to be intimidated, who stood up even when they stood alone. And because they spoke, things changed. But here's the question. Will you be among those who speak, or will you be among those who remain silent? Will you choose the discomfort of standing for justice, or will you choose the regret of knowing you did nothing? Make no mistake, when you see wrongdoing and you do not challenge it, you have sided with it. When you allow injustice to pass without resistance, you have given it permission to continue. And the world does not need more people who are afraid to speak. It needs more people who understand that their voice has power. So today I challenge you, when you see something wrong, speak up. When you see someone being treated unfairly, do not look away. When the world tries to silence you in the name of comfort, remind yourself that silence is not safety, it is surrender. Stand for truth, defend the weak, challenge what is wrong, and let your voice be counted. Because history does not remember those who watched, only those who acted. Silence when God has placed a word in your heart is an act of disobedience. There are moments when you feel a strong conviction to speak, when God has given you wisdom, revelation, or a message that could change someone's life. But instead of speaking, you hesitate, you doubt yourself. You wonder, what if they don't listen? Or what if I say it wrong? And so you remain silent. But understand this, when God gives you something to say, it is not for you, it is for someone else. Your words may be the answer to another person's prayer. Your voice may be the encouragement someone desperately needs. You do not know how many people are waiting for you to speak, how many lives could be transformed by the very thing you are afraid to say. Consider the great voices of history, the prophets, the leaders, the reformers. They did not speak because it was convenient. They spoke because they had no choice. When God places a burden on your heart, it is not for you to keep, it is for you to release. The moment you stay silent when God is pushing you to speak, you are withholding a blessing, delaying a breakthrough, and even allowing people to remain in darkness when you carry the light. Many times people think that silence will keep them safe. They assume that avoiding confrontation or discomfort will make life easier. But the truth is, when you refuse to speak what God has placed in you, you carry the weight of regret. You will always wonder, what if I had said something? What if my words could have made a difference? And that question will follow you for the rest of your life. Do not be like Jonah, who tried to run from what God told him to do. Do not be like Moses, who doubted his own ability to speak. Do not be like the servant who buried his talent out of fear. Instead, be bold, be obedient, speak when God calls you to speak, because someone's breakthrough, someone's deliverance, someone's destiny may be connected to the very words you are afraid to say. So I leave you with this. When the time comes, will you be silent or will you obey? Will you hold back, or will you step forward in faith? Because silence in the presence of divine instruction is not just hesitation, it is disobedience. And God does not bless those who shrink back. He blesses those who step forward in boldness.